Got our hub all cleaned up here, and I've got all of our new bearings and races and our seal. So now we're ready to reassemble the hub. Now we got to install these races into the hub, the inner and outer. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. I actually have a press, so I'm gonna press these in. But since this video is kind of intended for the do-it-yourselfer, not everybody's gonna have a press in their garage. So one thing you can do is you don't really want to hit this directly with a hammer because it can chip or damage the race itself. So what you can do is you can take a board here, set it on top of it, and then take a hammer and drive the race down as far as you can with that. Well, that's not going to get it in there all the way, so you're going to have something to put it on down there a little bit further. If you happen to have a socket or something that's about the same diameter as that, you can use that. Or what I've done here, I'm going to use this in my press, but this is one of the old bearing races. And what I did is I put it on the grinder and I ground the outside diameter of it down to where it was just slip inside there. So that way I can use that as a spacer and push that race all the way down into the bore as far as it needs to go. So let's go over to the press and we'll install this. All right, I've got our hub set up in the press. I'm going to zoom on in here a little closer and show you a little more detail. And what we're going to start with is the race. You want to be sure and put it in with the large end first. Set it in there just like that. Then I've got me a little plate here that I'm going to set on top of it. And then we're going to run that press down and press it in until the plate is flush with the top of the hub. Just like that. Now I'm going to raise the ram back up. Okay. Then I'm going to take my little spacer collar that I made with the old race. I'm going to set it right on top of the new race. Then we'll replace our plate. And we'll press that on down the rest of the way. There we go. There we have it. Got the race all the way down in the bore. We'll just flip it over and we'll do the same procedure for the outer race. Now we got those races pressed into that hub. Next we want to install the inner bearing, and then we're going to go back to the press and we're going to press the seal in. But before we press that seal in there, I want to go ahead and I want to pack these bearings. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. You actually make a little old tool that you can clip onto either side of this and use a grease gun to pack it in there. But my daddy taught me how to pack bearings by hand, and this is what you do. You just get you a dab of grease right there in the palm of your hand, then you take the bearing and you just kind of rake it through that grease. Just get you a little bite at a time and just work it around and just keep packing it right there in the palm of your hand. And you know you got it in there sufficiently when you start seeing a little bit of that grease come out the end of it there. So you just work your way all the way around until you get that grease all the way through the bearing. There we go. Now, we'll just take that bearing, maybe a little swipe of grease on the race, and we'll drop that bearing in place. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pack my outer bearing since I got grease on my hands here. And then we'll go back over to the press and we're gonna press the seal on top of the hub here. Alright, that's got that in there good and flushed, so we're ready to install this back on the trailer. Now we're going to install the hub back onto the spindle. Now one of the last things you want to do before you put this all together is where the seal runs here, you want to kind of check that edge. Sometimes the bearings, if they've been run loose, they'll kind of hit up against that face of that and it'll make a little sharp lip there that you can damage your seal on when you install the hub. So if it does have a little bit of a lip on there, take you a file or a grinder and just kind of knock that edge off so it doesn't damage the seal. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take and put just a little bit of grease on that spindle where the seal is going to run. And we're also going to put some grease in the lip of the seal. Alright, now we're ready to install it. So we'll just slide that up on there. And as the seal comes in contact with the raised part of the spindle, I usually just kind of like turn it a little bit as I put it on there. That way it doesn't possibly damage the seal as you push it on there. Okay. Next we're going to install the outer bearing. Just like that. Then our washer. And then the castle nut. Now what we want to do to get the right preload on these bearings is you want to have the nut tight enough to where you don't have any play in the hub, so that way it makes your seal work, but you don't want to get it too tight. If you tighten the nut down too tight, then it'll cause the bearings to overheat and they'll fail. So what I like to do is just snug it down real good, then turn it a few times to make sure that the bearings are seated into the race real good. That's pretty tight right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back that off where it turns freely, but we don't have any play. I can't feel any play in that thing. That's pretty good right there. So I'm going to stop right there and drop our new cotter pin in place. And fold it over. I'm going to nip that little tail off. Alright, so that way we got plenty of clearance for our bearing buddy. Next we're going to install the bearing buddy. What I'm going to use my composition hammer and just drive it on there. Now if you don't have a composition hammer, you don't want to hit this directly with a hammer. You can put it on there, put you a board over it, then you can use your hammer to drive it on in there. I'm just going to turn it a little bit as I put it in there and make sure I've got it in there square. There we go. Alright, now all we got to do is finish filling up the hub with grease, and we'll just about have this wrapped up. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to just pump this thing full of grease. As it starts getting full, you can see that piston starting to retract. Okay, now you can start seeing a little bit of grease coming out of the hole there. So I'm going to stop right there for a minute. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin this hub a few times, and what that does is that kind of helps work the air out of it. And we're just going to continue to spin this a few times, then we'll put the grease gun back on it. And just keep pumping it until the piston stays out all the way. Now we got that hub completely full of grease. Last thing to go on is going to be the little hub cover, just like that. And then we're just about ready to reinstall the wheel. But before I do, one last thing that I like to do is put a little bit of anti-seize compound on the studs. Since this thing is going to be going into water, that'll keep those lug nuts from rusting on the hub, and if you do have a flat or something on down the road, it makes it a lot easier to get them off later. Oh yeah, that sounds a lot better there. All right, so we'll do the other side the same way we did this one, and then we'll have this project wrapped up. All right, well, that's going to wrap up this episode of D-Ray's Shop. You know, doing bearing maintenance on your trailer is really easy to do. Shoot, if this old redneck can do it, I know you can too. All right, be sure to stop by the shop again. You never know what we're going to be working on next. All right, as always, appreciate y'all watching. Y'all have a good one. Catch y'all next time around. Let's go fishing.